pleased to be here. I was at the very first Medicine X meeting, and a lot has happened in 5 years. PCORI's been around a little longer than that. The coffee's gotten better. The meeting has turned from an interesting meeting to an amazing meeting, beautifully organized, brilliantly produced, and incredibly inclusive. And my son was declared cured of Burkitt's lymphoma. And that's why what I'm about to tell you, and I actually wasn't going to say that, but I have to do something that is within the theme of these unbelievable people who just came out here and opened their hearts to us. So, you know, that's the best I can do. What I'm about to tell you is both personal and professional. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we do, just as a little bit of a reminder. I know many people in this room are familiar with PCORI. I remember 5 years ago when I first came, I actually wasn't at PCORI, it was the year after. And when I would say, I'm from PCORI, they'd say, oh, is that a cheese? What is that exactly? Well, now I'm not getting that so much, and that's very exciting. But we were established by Congress in 2010 to do two things. One, to do research, comparative effectiveness research, this versus that, to help people make decisions. And secondly, to take those results and get them out to the people who need them. That's what we do all day long. Why is this necessary? The kind of work we do, the kind of work we fund, has been funded for a number of years, comparative effectiveness research. But it's important because for all of the advances we have heard about in medicine, and you all know this as well as anybody, if not better, there are many questions that patients face on their own, with their families, with their caregivers, with their clinicians, for which there are no good answers or no useful answers yet. So people really still want to know, in their particular circumstance, based on their concerns, outcomes that matter to them, what should we do? How can we make an informed decision based on the best evidence that means something to us? And that's why we're around. We really try to approach this not just from a vigorous and rigorous scientific point of view, but as many of you know, and as you've heard, as I'll tell you in a second, we engage caregivers, patients, researchers, clinicians, employers, health insurers. The point being that if you're not talking to the folks, especially patients and clinicians and caregivers, who are the people at the end of the day who make the decisions that matter to all of us when it comes to care, but if you're not talking to those folks at the very beginning and asking them what do they need to know, then everything you do after that may not get to the answer that those folks need. So that's been our philosophy from the start. So far as you can see, we've funded almost $1.5 billion in these kinds of projects. I know there are some awardees in this room. Mazel tov, that's great. I'm very excited for you. And I'm sure many of you, after we speak in the next day or so, hopefully will have a little more interest in working with us. So engagement, patient engagement, engagement with other stakeholders, is at the core of our work and has been from day one. In fact, among the very first people who were hired at PCORI way, way back were the directors of patient engagement and stakeholder engagement. I was also in that group. And it's really because, if we don't talk to people from the start and involve them from the start as engaged partners in the research that we support, not just study subjects, not just study participants, partners, developing the questions, developing the protocols, being involved in the work itself, and then being involved in getting the results out, then we haven't done our job. So let me talk for a second about what I hope you can help me with and help PCORI with after we have our little conversation here. As I'm sure you can appreciate, the best research in the world is not very helpful if it doesn't get to the people who need it. So as you saw from that early, as you saw from that early slide, I'm fighting a cold, I apologize. One of our missions is to figure out how to get the research results out in ways that are meaningful. And we do that working with patients and the other stakeholders who we engage with, because they are the ones pardon me, they are the ones who are going to help us translate, provide context for the information, and hopefully get it into their communications channels that will allow the folks that they work with to make use of this information most effectively. So we start with peer review of our research. We're required by law to peer review the research that we do. This is very unusual. Many of you may be familiar with peer review. It's basically the process of getting independent experts to look at the work that has been done and assess, is it scientifically valid? Is it scientifically rigorous? Is it the kind of information that can stand up on its own and be presented to professional audiences? So we do that kind of peer review. We're working on the process now. We do it from a technical point of view, from a biostatistical point of view, a scientific point of view. But it's very important to us that we bring patients and other stakeholders into that process as reviewers. We're not necessarily asking those folks to be trained biostatisticians or scientists, although, as it turns out, many of them actually are, and that's great. We want to know what lived experience, what experience in the real world, what personal experience, what assessment of measures of usefulness, utility, relevance can those folks bring to this process? Because again, if the scientific rigor of the work is really sound, but the value in the real world is not quite as good as it might be, we haven't done our full jobs. So that's our first step, and I'm going to ask your help in doing that in just a second. After that, based on that information, we work on how to get those results out to folks in ways that they can use them. And we are required by law, not just to do peer review, but then to produce summaries of the information in ways that will be relevant to patients, clinicians, and the general public. This is very unusual. And if any of you have been following what's been going on in the movement to make more research results available broadly to the public, you know that this is one of those particular conundrums of how to do this work, not just so that anybody can get access to the basic research, but how can we make that information more useful and relevant to folks and get that out broadly to advance decision making? So we are going to do that, and we embrace it fully. And again, we are keeping patients and other stakeholders central in that process. Because if we're not working with them closely, we don't know exactly what the best forms of communication are going to be. And we also don't want this great stuff to just sit on the PCORI website, as wonderful as that would be. We want everyone who can use it to use it. So, I hope you can help us do this. You heard from Larry earlier today that we have a little area right around the corner where we are happy to talk to you generally and to, pardon me again, to give you background on what we're doing here. But we're doing a workshop in about an hour. Here's where it's going to be, upstairs. We're all going to meet there, and then we probably are going to go outside because I think we're going to have a fairly sizable group. We have asked folks ahead of time with Medicine X's help to sign up people who would be interested in this. I think we have about 50 or 60 so far. And then we've asked a subset of those folks, patients, to take a look at the material that we're producing as part of our peer review process, and we are going to test drive in real time what we're trying to do. And we are going to take that experience and that feedback and put that input back into the process to try to improve things. If you don't listen and you don't evaluate and you don't do something with what you hear, then you're not being very good scientists and you're not being very good communicators. So we hope that you'll stop by. If you can't stop by at the workshop itself, because there's lots of great stuff going on today, we hope you will email us and volunteer to be a peer reviewer. We will have all kinds of background material and training material for you. And over time, we hope to build a large group of folks who we can count on to help review the results of those 550 and soon to be substantially more projects as time goes by. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all either in the next hour or through the day today or tomorrow.